This is Gareth Southgate, and this is the Three Lions podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Three Lions podcast. My name is Russell Osborne and this is an independent England football supporters podcast. I hope you're well. Thank you very much for tuning in as always, and to the recent episodes. As always, they are available at your podcast provider of choice or threelionspodcast.com. Please do go check them out if you've not already done so. I'm hoping to get a review of the recent Arnold Clark Cup tournament out very soon. I'm just in the throngs of putting all that together at the moment. Also working on some other episodes too, putting some feelers out there, speaking to various people. Plenty to hopefully come in the next few months and weeks. But before I crack on with this episode, some news that you may have missed. Firstly, something I'm sure many Travel Club members are already aware of, but I just thought I'd reiterate it. Italy away next month in Naples. Back on the 10th of February, it was announced by the England Supporters Travel Club that, and I quote, slightly paraphrasing, the Italian Football Association had indicated that our allocation will be 2,482, and that the stadium will have a reduced capacity of 48,467 for the match. Then on the 16th of February, ESTC announced that 5,048 members had registered for tickets, so demand has clearly outweighed supply. That is on the basis ESTC can't secure more tickets, which at more than double the original quoted figure I find probably nigh on impossible. So what does that mean? Well, basically, tickets will go to a ballot for those on less than, and I'm guesstimating here, less than 2021 caps. Estimating, because at the time of recording there has been no official announcement as yet. And as I think I've previously mentioned here on the pod, the ticket collection, ticket prices and various other details that we all rely on haven't been made available as yet. ESTC have mentioned that they expect this sort of information to be not so readily available. So yeah, bear with them. But keep checking your emails and that sort of thing. Also, tickets have since gone on sale for the North Macedonia home match to be played at Old Trafford, Monday the 19th of June. I imagine Monday evening is going to be a bit of a pain all round. I don't remember many home matches being played on a Monday in recent memory. Someone's probably going to pull me up on that and tell me that there was one last year. But I can't think any. Anyhow, that's not the major issue I have. And I appreciate that this is something that many fans who make the journey to Wembley from outside of the south have, is the general transport costs or availability of trains coming back from Manchester. I had a quick look. It appears that the last one out of Manchester Piccadilly to London Euston is at 9:15, which is no good to anyone going to the match. So I basically have three options, and I assume probably be the same for many others. Stay over, get an early one back the following day, ready for work. I could drive and drive straight back afterwards. I could catch a coach. All are fairly feasible. It's not as if I've not done the journey before, but it got me thinking, if people are running coaches from wherever in the country, feel free to drop me a note, and I'm more than happy to give them a mention on the pod. Email me threelionspodcast@gmail.com. And then I was thinking, this isn't something I'm good at, but I wonder if all the planned coaches could be collated into a database come web page. Then you would select where you were coming from, and you'd find the nearest coach being laid on. It's probably more effort than it's worth, especially just for one game. But then, if it was done, the framework would all be in one place and could be used for a later date. Because I often read on various forums, Facebook pages, people saying they intend to run a coach from X location and there'll be someone else doing it from Y location. But you look at these threads and they're all jumbled around all over the place. If they were all to be in one place, then you could just go to that and work out who's running a coach. Anyway, that's just how my mind was working. And unless anyone else has any better suggestions for getting there, let me know. Flying, I don't know. It just doesn't seem very sensible to me. Just a short hop up to Manchester from London. Sort of thing that I would complain about teams doing. And then, as I predicted a while back, a friendly has been announced for Friday the 13th of October. I didn't predict who the opponents would be, but I did predict that there would be another one added. The opponents, Australia. In fact, the Aussies, or should I say the Matildas, have also been announced as opponents for the Lionesses too, for a friendly in April at Brentford. I'll take a look at that one nearer the time. But with this senior men's fixture, the 2023 calendar is now complete. I have to say, with the greatest of respect to Australia, it seems a little underwhelming. Ranked 27th in the world, they finished second in their group at the Qatar World Cup, then lost 2-1 to the eventual winners Argentina. I'm struggling to think what we could learn from playing them. The Socceroos, as they are known as, I'm guessing it'd probably be more beneficial for them. I'm sure they'll make the journey worthwhile by playing other games in and around Europe, but it seems a fair distance to lug a load of kit across the world. And I think the vast majority of their squad generally play in Europe, so they won't have to come far. And likewise, England and London has quite an Australian community. Perhaps I'm being a little negative. Hopefully it doesn't go the same way as the scheduled New Zealand fixture from last year before went. On the history front, on that particular fixture, it'll be the 8th time the two nations have met. Previously, England have won 4. There've been 2 draws and 1 defeat. That was some time ago now, when we lost at West Ham's old Upton Park in 2003. That was Wayne Rooney's debut. My word, there'll be people going to England games now who weren't even born when that game was played. And then the last time we played was in 2016, Marcus Rashford's debut, where he scored after 3 minutes as we won up at the Stadium of Light in Sunderland. And of those 7 games, we have never met at Wembley. We've played 5 down under. I wouldn't expect an immediate reciprocal match, though, as we're yet to return to the likes of Romania, Austria, the States, Costa Rica, Nigeria, all those from recent friendlies. Be good though, wouldn't it? Australia away. Now, I've said before that I love reading England fan-written books, those that document England games, those away trips as well, through anecdotes and memories. And I've read a fair few, and they're all written by Englishmen. That is, until now.
I swallowed the cold beans and looked around the small custody cell. Some sort of toilet in the corner, a mattress on top of some wood on the other side. That was it. Not exactly the Ritz, but hey, you made a bed, now sleep in it. How did I end up here? How did a passion for football from a young age take me to a small custody cell in Birmingham, awaiting my police interview? Life is funny that way, isn't it? One second you stood with your mates on top of a table and on top of the world, singing your hearts out, and the next, you're arrested for football-related violence. Life is a wild ride, so you better wear a seatbelt, and I had forgotten mine this sunny afternoon in March. Aza, we're set to go. Are you ready? The police officer's voice came from the other side of the big, thick door. I swallowed the last bit of baked beans along with all of my pride and stood up from the floor. I pulled my hand through my long blonde hair, took a deep breath and walked towards the door. Yes, sir, I'm ready.
That was the voice of Luton and England fan Aza Fogelburg. And it's my pleasure to welcome her to the Three Lions podcast. Aza, hello.
Hello, Russell. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yourself?
I'm good, thank you.
Cool. Three Lions and a Kitten. It's a short story about a long love. It's a fantastic book. Well done on it. I know it's only sort of just recently come out. How did all of this come about? How long did it take? What's the process? And tell us, just to begin with, about the book.
I mean, the stories have always been in my head. You know, when you sit on a flight on the way back from a game, you can't sum it up in your head and you think to yourself, oh, you know, it's like you put it in your little memory bank. It came about 2020 during lockdown. So lockdown projects. Started writing it at work. We were terribly quiet. There weren't any meetings, nothing to do. So I sat in my office a lot. So I started writing it. And it just came to me. It's one of them books that really writes itself.
Right.
So the actual writing wasn't so hard. It was the other process, you know, finding someone to edit it, finding someone to design the book cover, and then the long process of publishing it. So 3 years, 2.5 really, but it's been a long labour of love.
Wow, it's certainly come out that way. It's a great book. But now let me throw in the curveball for those that may not be aware of you or know you. You're from Sweden.
I am, and I think that's really what put an edge to this story, because, you know, as much as we love reading about people going to football, because I do, I love all of it. But I think the fact that I am not from here, it really is that kind of question mark. Why? Well,
let's start. Why?
I'm going to put it all on my father. Growing up, he was a fanatic football fan. Not just England, any football. You won't find a man who is more into his football than my father. He appreciates its true pure form. I think back in 1969, when he was 10, they started to air football directly from England in the afternoon on a Saturday in Sweden, and he was hooked. Oh. That was it. Nottingham Forest came to our small town in Sweden to play, and they became his team. And he's followed England ever since fanatically. And as we started showing interest in football, me and my brother, it was installed in us that England, that's where football comes from. That's who you follow. And we never really questioned it. Just went with it.
I see. What's your dad's name, just to give him a name check?
My dad's name is Stefan.
Oh, well, good on Stefan. He's taken you on a journey, or many a journey together through reading the book.
Yes.
Now, obviously, being over in Sweden and watching games on the telly, some of the games, there was a little conflict where England would play Sweden.
Absolutely.
There was one game that you mentioned. It was one game that I remember going to back in 2002 in the World Cup. It was the opening game, or England's opening game, against Sweden. And you were at high school at the time. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think this is when my true feelings was, you know, properly established. Before then, people were a bit like, oh, okay, yeah, you like English football. But the day after we played, I had about a week or so left of high school before I was graduating. And I showed up in an England top the day after. It was a draw, as you remember. And, proudly parading it around the halls. And people thought, what? What are you doing? And I think that's when they realised that, okay, she's about something else here. She means business with this.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine supporting another country
No.
in England. But I appreciate that everyone is different and everyone has their own reasons for doing it. But to turn up in an opposing nation's shirt takes some guts, and I take my hat off to you.
Yeah, I mean, my dad would do the same. He worked in the city council, in a higher position, and he would wear his England top. Whether he had meetings or not, he didn't care. The top would come on. So I think, again, it goes back to my father and his sort of approach to life that, doesn't matter what people think, you do what you want to do.
Yeah, no, fair play. So as you began to grow older, the bug began to grab you harder as it does to all England supporters.
Yes.
And right, I want to go to a game. I want to experience Wembley or something. Obviously for you, it was slightly different. So how did your England journey begin, as it were?
I mean, it was me continuously nagging at my father, we must start going. I mean, it's not in the book, but we actually did go to a game in Sweden when England played a friendly against Sweden in Gothenburg. I think it might have been the year before 2005, but we never met up with any fans. We weren't part of the England travelling club. We just went as two neutral people. After that, I said to Dad, we got to join England fans. Let's just do it. We went ahead and did. And I suppose the rest is history. We went to Denmark that first game. And that was it. We had been on the forum for a few months, chatting to people. It was a bit hard because there was a lot of questioning. What are you doing here? But there was a nice group that took us on. And we had arranged to meet up with them in a pub when we went to Denmark. And they kind of welcomed us with open arms. And after that, there was no going back. Absolutely not. Despite the result and the humiliation that night, I think we both knew when we sat on that bench on the way back that this is it now. This is the beginning of something big. And Mom knew it as well when we got back that, okay, they've gotten on a train now that we cannot stop.
Because your first experience of an away game, as you say, going to Copenhagen, very sort of similar to mine in the fact that you spent the night on the bench. I remember doing exactly the same when I went to. Actually, it wasn't my first away game. It was I don't know, a second or third. Spending the night on a bench in Barcelona. And you've done exactly the same with your dad in Copenhagen.
I think it's something all fans can relate to. At one point, we have all been on that bench.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, so it was, you met all in a pub, and I'm guessing that you were quite lucky that you found these fellow fans who've ultimately turned out to be long-term England fans and friends as well.
Definitely. I mean, let's say we hadn't spoke to people beforehand and hadn't introduced ourselves. We had just showed up as two foreigners to the pub. It might have been a different story, could have been a different welcome, and we might have been put off. So, we got a lot to thank this bunch of people for really, really embracing us.
So that was the first away game, and being in Denmark and Copenhagen was relatively simple to get to from Sweden.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then came getting to England.
Yep.
And obviously that involved flying, of which something you'd never done before.
We never did. No, I mean, back in Sweden, you had simple holidays. You never jet off on any planes anywhere. So for us, this was a big step. I mean, my dad, he'd never flown either, even though he was, in his mid-40s. So for us, that was a big thing and nerve-wracking, really.
So what were those games that you came over to see?
We played Austria and we played Poland in the qualifiers.
So this was for the 2006 World Cup, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, yes.
So
I think it was October 2005.
This was a time when Wembley was being rebuilt. So you'd come over to Manchester, and what was the feelings then? You finally made it over to England. What was the overriding emotions of just being in England?
It was, without sounding, too cheesy, when we were coming in with the plane, I remember looking, because we came through the clouds really fast, and all of a sudden all this greenery opened up under us, and I thought, we're in England, something I dreamt about since I was a little girl. It was just fantastic, despite the fact that Dad had booked us into a very murdery hotel. I think that was part of the charm, really, stepping into those doors that night, wrapping a little quilt around you that had bag burns all over it. There was a weird smell in the room. Dad was, throwing timber as usual. And it was just one of them that you felt like, this is fantastic.
Welcome to England. Welcome to Manchester.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Well, the results were positive because we obviously made it towards the World Cup in 2006 being held in Germany. And I think it was about this time that you were so committed to England that you had it inked on yourself, didn't you?
Yes. So it would have been a few months before we went to Germany in the World Cup. And this is before the whole tattoo trend and people having tattoos. So me going to this woman on a back street to get, Forever England on my arm, that was quite a big step from having just watched it on TV at home. It kind of all just ran away with me that summer.
Well, this was in a Swedish tattoo parlour, was it?
Oh, absolutely. She sort of questioned it a little bit, but, she was very old. There was rumours that her eyesight was, failing. It probably wasn't the best quality of a tattoo either, but I did not care. It was there on my arm, and it was my pride and joy that summer.
Wow. Well, that World Cup came around, and for the second World Cup in a row, we faced Sweden. You didn't get tickets for the games, and you watched them in the fan park, didn't you?
Yeah, we had only been going for a short time, and because of the cap system, which is a very fair system, to be honest, we weren't given a chance. We had tickets to a few non-England games that we were attending just to get the atmosphere. But when it came to the actual England games, we were watching it in a fan park in Frankfurt.
Yeah.
And they had set that up in a way that it genuinely felt like you were part of it. There was a big screen in the middle of the river, and they put football stands up along the river. So you sat there on the stand with all the other football fans, and it was fantastic. The atmosphere was absolutely buzzing.
Yeah. No, I saw a couple of. I don't think I saw any of the games in Frankfurt on the big screen. I went to Leipzig, and there was somewhere else I went to. Or Berlin I went to. But yeah, it was a fantastic World Cup. Obviously England fell at the quarterfinal stage. It was Portugal again. Yeah.
Portugal again.
That was Ronaldo's wink, wasn't it?
That was Ronaldo's wink, which I was bitter about for about a decade, I'd say, That really stuck with me.
I think we all, whenever we see Ronaldo as England fans, the first thing that comes to our mind is that damn wink.
It's the wink and the emotions that you've attached to that wink as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By now, you had started to accrue some caps, which is what England fans we'll know about. You get like your loyalty caps for following England home and away, which ultimately helps us in securing sort of tournament tickets.
Yeah.
But obviously to get these caps, you've got to go to the games.
That's
Now,
it.
there's a couple of games that you mention in the book. There's Macedonia, which sounds like a good crack, and a game that I didn't go to. And then there was Russia in 2007. Now, the book is sort of builds up to this moment and what it becomes of you, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us what you want to about that period of time?
I mean, it was a sort of turning point because for me, before Russia, football had been pure joy. I know the heartache when you lose, obviously not joy, but going to games, seeing your friends, traveling around the world to watch England, it was just associated with joy. And I think Russia took that away from me for quite a long period of time. It's not even so much the fact that I was attacked. That bit isn't something I can remember. I've heard, people who was around talking to me about it, telling me what went down, but it's not in my memory. The taxi ride, however, is something that kind of plagued me for years to come. Sometimes unknowingly, I would get in a taxi, could have been 5-6 years later, and I would get that panic feeling again. And I would realise that it's still affecting me, and it still does a little bit today. Sometimes I am incredibly funny when it comes to taxis, taking taxis. If my children were to get in a taxi, no, it's just one of them acts. It just still kind of haunts me.
Yeah.
I think I was very keen on not turning it into a thing. Didn't want it to be something that people pitied me for, but it turned out to be something that shaped me for years to come.
Because basically, you came out of the airport in Moscow and had arranged to meet some friends at a certain part of Moscow or something along those lines, and you got in what became an unmarked taxi, alone, single female, on your own, in the taxi, going the wrong way, knowing that things had the potential to go very wrong. Yes,
and I think you sit there in the taxi, and obviously you check out the route beforehand. This is before we had, GPS. You could check maps and stuff, but we are looked on the computer beforehand. I knew it wasn't a long ride. There were so many red flags that I just ignored, because a lot of times in life you overthink things and you kind of tell yourself, oh, you're being silly now. That's obviously not the case. So I think I told myself that despite all the warning signs being there, he never really paid attention to what I was saying. I had my little hotel written down on a note. He didn't want to look at that. Turned the music up loud, was avoiding any conversation, just driving. And I think when it had been sort of around the 40-45 minute mark, and I realised that we were way out of town, that's when that panic started to really set in.
Yeah, it's quite the ride, and I mean that in the sense of how you've written it in the book. That it's like you're gripped on it. It's unfortunately you got out and are here to tell the tale.
Yeah.
But as you say, just before that, the next day you were then unfortunately attacked outside your hotel or hostel.
Yeah. Same evening. So, my very good friend, as you know from the book, Chess, obviously came and met me after I jumped out of the car. I think that whole procedure was about 2-3 hours. We were both trained. He went back with me to the hotel. I remember him saying, are you okay? Will you be all right? Usually I would have gotten ready to go out and meet all my friends as originally planned, but I thought I can't hack it. I am absolutely drained. So I decided to call it a night, go up my room, sleep it off, and then meet everyone the next day. There was very, very poor reception in my room, so I took my phone to make some phone calls. I walked around the hotel complex. Evidently, that was enough to draw attention to me. We've been told beforehand not to wear collars, not to kind of walk alone. I thought it'd be okay walking around the hotel complex, but it just wasn't. And it's hard for me to retell it because it's blurry. Yeah. But there was voices, there was a hit to the back of my head, and the rest is just a blur. I don't think I was completely unconscious because I can remember certain things. It's like when you're half sleeping on a plane, you can hear announcements in the background, but you're not quite awake. It felt like that a bit. And then obviously waking up in that back room, having some woman dabbing away at your face, not speaking much English. It's a surreal experience, and it's hard for you to work through it because you can't quite remember it. So it became one of them things that I just didn't know what to do with it. So I kind of stuffed it at the back of my head. Yeah. Still went up and went to the game the next day because I thought, I'm here now. I'm going to make the most of it.
Yeah.
So the whole next day, the match day, was also just plagued by constant clashes, people getting into, fights with the Russians. They were lurking down the roads behind. It was like a war zone out there, really. It's not something that me at that age, coming from Sweden, living quite a sheltered life, had ever experienced before.
How old were you at the time?
2007, I must have been 21.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then, say you'd seen the game, had that horrific experience, come back to Sweden, and then you were sort of the next few years, you were contemplating coming over to England, and ultimately you did, didn't you? Yeah. You came over to Birmingham area, hence your that Birmingham twang in your accent.
Yeah.
And took in another game, an English Premier League game. Was it Aston Villa against Spurs?
It was, yes. This is roughly a year into living in England. So we're now in 2009. I think it was early spring, March time. Right. Friends were coming up from London to watch Villa Spurs. And I thought, I'll tag along, football. And things didn't quite go to plan that day.
Go on. What happened?
Obviously, I was still in quite a dark place. I didn't know it, didn't acknowledge it, thought everything was fine. Been a year and a half. Yeah. But we started early. We drank quite heavily. And I kind of got lost from my friends. So I just attached myself to another group of people as we were walking to the stadium. There was a nasty atmosphere already. People were starting to, chuck bottles. The police was coming. They were blocking everybody. People were trying to push through. And I got caught up in it. And I think I was carrying a lot of anger at that time. And it just came out in an ugly way. And as the person next to me was wrestled to the ground, I was told I wasn't getting in either because I was, with this group of Spurs fans. And someone grabbed my shoulder, and that was enough for me. I sort of went for him. I mean, I wouldn't say, I'm not going to sit there and say I floored a police officer. I'm not that strong. I did hit him, and obviously that is absolutely enough for them to then, with force, wrestle you to the ground in the back of the police van. And that was it. I was being arrested, football violence, and I was locked up for the night.
And that's where we come round to what we started with the chat is where you found yourself in that cell, waiting to hear what your fate would be.
Yes, I think that to me was probably the absolute biggest turning point. I mean, I lost track of time. I must have been arrested in the afternoon, obviously before kickoff. This was sometime around midnight, I'd say. So I'd sobered up. Well, I've been left in the cell long enough to really be able to think, what have you done? You know, you are in this cell. You have punched a police officer at a football game. What sort of trouble have you got yourself into? And I think there was a lot of self-reflecting that afternoon. It wasn't a pretty time by any means.
So with that comes the football banning order, doesn't it? And then basically your membership with the England Supporters Travel Club goes, doesn't it?
It did, and I think you would argue that I did get let off lightly, because we all know if this had been a big bloke, you know, that punched a police officer, I don't think they would have gotten away with just withdraw membership. But I think they took pity on me, really, which is even sadder, really, because I was obviously just a pitiful little state. And but to me, having my membership took off me, I think it was one of the worst punishments I could imagine at this point. I probably needed that to step away from it for a bit, to kind of recuperate and regain that love for football that I had lost these past few years. But back then, right then when it happened, it was devastating.
I can well imagine.
Yeah.
Well, fast forward to 2010, you find yourself living in England now, and you've got a son and a daughter, Freddie and Mia.
Yep.
A few years later, after your ban has sort of expired, you're back at Wembley, sort of in the whole circle sort of evolves. Instead of your dad, Stefan, taking you, it's now you taking young Freddie to the football.
Yes. And
what a feeling.
Exactly. You summed it up there. I think that's one of the absolute happiest times of my life, when I got to get on that coach with my son. We stepped off. You know, when you come into London on the coach, you could see the arch of Wembley. Saw that look in my son's eyes. He had the same look later on that afternoon when we took those last little steps up and Wembley opens up in front of you. I mean, you can't describe the feeling unless you've been there yourself. And I think that is that beauty of that circle of life. You feel like, wow, I've been here before, but with my dad. Now I'm here with my son. And it was a big day, probably bigger for me than it was for my son.
Well, there's so many other things in the book that I'd love to chat about, but at the same time, I want other people to sort of read the book and experience it for themselves. I don't want to give away too much.
No.
But what I want to sort of ask is, and it's something that isn't in the book, when the World Cup in 2018 came around, Russia, what were your thoughts then? Obviously, there was the whole Russian incident beforehand. Were you tempted by that?
I mean, as a matter of fact, I still, by this point, hadn't rejoined the England fans. When I went 2016 with my son, we got tickets of someone else who was a member, passed it on to me. We hadn't rejoined, we wasn't on a cap system. Obviously, with it being in Russia, came with conflicted feelings for me. I decided it wouldn't be appropriate to go. Wouldn't want to be there again, if I'm honest. So it was one of them tournaments that I decided to watch at home. And it really was quite a summer, wasn't it?
Yes.
I think, the opening game against Tunisia, that late winner that we got, after thinking, gosh, are we drawing to this now? We had a triumph with Panama. Belgium was a bit of a, let's forget about that. And then we went on to defeat one of our big brain ghosts, didn't we? By winning penalties against Colombia.
Yeah.
And then we got Sweden. And again, that's another thing that England's always struggled with Sweden. So to beat them 2-0, I think finally I got to send that text message to my friends. We got you. We have finally got you. Probably wasn't so gracious in victory then. And then on to the Croatia game. Remember, we went into a pub in Solihull to watch it, me and my friends. And when Trippier scored that early goal, you thought, wow, we are doing it. We are living this, We all know that didn't end so well. There was a little bit of a moment in the pub that day. I'm not going to lie that my temper was again, showing itself. I remember I'm a big crier at football, I'm not going to lie. I was crying in a corner. There was some girls there that had obviously only just attached themselves to the buzz of it. Sat there laughing, having a laugh, and I remember thinking, I'm going to lose my temper now. I'm sitting there laughing and I'm crying. But we made it out of the pub. There was no football violence this time, and that lingered with me. I took a few days off work to get over that. Then I went and got Gareth Southgate's waistcoat tattooed on my leg. And I've written the letters soon under it, as if to say, not now, but soon. And that's something people still mock me about, because they say, when then? When is this happening? You're deluding yourself. But I think that tattoo and the fact that I also ordered a waistcoat from Amazon, it just proves that I was once again really, really wrapped up in it.
Really committed.
The year later is when I then rejoined England Fans Travelling Club together with my son, and we decided we're going for it now. We're back.
Because that was the year of the Euros.
Yes.
2020, ultimately 2021. It was a funny old time, not just for football fans, obviously, but for the whole world.
Yeah.
And we were all frustrated that, because obviously the Euros, we knew it was going to be sort of pan-European, but Wembley was going to host a fair few England games, so it's going to be like a home tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you sit on all of this? How did it pan out for you? Were you getting tickets?
Yes. I mean, it was an emotional roller coaster from finding out that the original tournament was postponed. Then we had tickets for the opening game against Croatia originally. We lost those, and I sort of thought, both me, my son and my dad had tickets for a few of the games. We lost all those. And we thought, well, I resigned to the idea that I'm not going to be watching this tournament live. So I was a bit bitter about it to start with. But then we kind of reapplied and found out we got tickets. And I think that was a fantastic feeling. The pandemic is slowly easing off. We're going to be back at football. It's a tournament. We'll be at Wembley. I think those were probably one of the best summers of my life, really, going to Wembley with my son, standing there in the crowd. I have a video just before the Denmark game. All the fans are singing Southgate, you're the one, and the man in front of me is overcome with emotion, tears down his cheek. And I always say, don't that just sum it up? We were back, and it was just fantastic to be there.
Yeah, that Denmark game. Yeah, there was the Germany game as well.
I was at that one as well.
Yeah.
And, that was big as well, beating them, knocking them out, because, we always got that rivalry with the Germans.
Absolutely.
And, that was a big day. And I didn't know then that I had ticket to the Denmark game. It was something that we kind of like last minute applied for and got. So that in itself was just a big buzz as well.
Yeah.
We missed out on a final, which looking back at it, I'm glad. I'm glad we weren't standing there, because at least the memory of being at Wembley with my son, watching us go into the final, is untarnished now. I can lock that away. It's fine. The final was a different experience. I think that was really hard to mount, to be in a final and to lose the way we did. Again, the penalties.
Yeah. Did you watch that in the pub as well?
We did. I went with my other half, his friends, and I took my son. I didn't take my daughter because I thought, probably if we lose, it's not the environment for her.
Yeah.
So, we were there, and I think watching my son cry as the penalties was playing out in front of us, it's one of them where, again, you get that feeling of, have been here before. Me crying, my dad comforting me, here I am comforting my own son, crying at football. And again, it is that circle of life, and everything kind of coming to full circle, as they say.
Yeah, he's in good company crying at football. I mean, I hold my hands up. I remember crying at the 1990 penalty shootout, watching that on telly and going to bed crying. It happens. It's football.
It does, and I always say you should never be ashamed of your emotions at sports. It just shows that you're passionate about something, you care about something. It's go for it. Let it all out. Absolutely.
Well, great way of putting it.
Yeah.
So here we are, sort of right up to date.
Yep.
We're almost on the verge of another qualifying campaign, this time for the European Championships to be held in Germany 2024.
Yes.
Are you back on board once again with the England supporters?
We have just renewed our membership, me and my son, and so we will be going at the Ukraine game at Wembley next month. That's our next game. Me and my son have elaborate plans to take him out of school and go to the Malta game in June.
Oh, yeah.
So we're working on convincing his dad that this is worth it. It's worth missing school over. See how we get on with that. And then there'll be a few home games. I might do a day trip to Macedonia. Be good to return. Obviously, it's not as easy anymore with children, work, commitments to just go for 3-4 days. But I always try and squeeze it in when I can.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're planning on Germany next summer. My dad is retired, which means he has these massive plans on being there for the month. I'm trying to explain to him that I cannot take a month off work. My son cannot take a month off school. So we probably be flying back and forth. If he's stationed himself in Germany, we'll be dipping in and out for the games.
That's the thing with Germany. It is quite easy to get back and forth from here.
Yeah, and they do. I've got to give it to them. They know how to host a tournament.
That is true. They do know how to host a tournament. They've got the infrastructure. They've got the stadiums. They're passionate just as we are.
Organised people as well. There's nothing's left to chance. It's all organised and you know what you're getting.
That's right. And they do good beer.
They do fantastic beer, actually. I mean, that's a whole other chapter, but you can ask my dad about it. He had his fair share in Germany 06.
Well, of course. Yeah, and it wasn't beer, was it?
It was the apple wine that he bought from his underground little shop and smuggled in his suitcase, kind of briefcase, into the Irish bar where we drank every night. And, I mean, he must have consumed litres. I am surprised he recovered from that. He won't like me saying that, but it is true.
Well, as I say, you'll have to read the book to find out more, to find out what it was like to, I don't know, sit next to Henrik Larsson, to hear about a certain Bill Hopkins. You'll have to read all about this. But I'll tell you, there's one thing, just quickly, Luton Town. How did that come about?
Luton Town, the second love of my life, bane of my life. My granddad was big on Luton. So it was Luton, Fulham and Ipswich that was always shown on the TV
right.
back in the 80s. And he had a soft spot for Luton. So whenever, we watched football together, it was Luton Town. I jumped on it. And I mean, that would probably have to be a separate book. My adventures with Luton, flying back and forth, watching us get relegated, 30-point deduction. I've got Luton tattooed on my hand, actually. So it's another very, very dedicated passion of mine. I don't go as often as I'd like to, because obviously it's easier to follow England. Yeah. It's not as often. Luton is every weekend. My son plays football. He plays for Blues. So we are there every weekend. I don't, unfortunately, have the time to go as much as I would like to, but I go when I can. And I'm hoping that this will be the year where we will get promoted back up where we belong.
Well, I look forward to reading a book along the lines of The Hatters and a Kitten or something like that.
Yeah. There's some stories there, I can assure you.
Oh, I look forward to it. Aza, tell us where we can buy the book.
You can buy the book on Amazon. You just go and type in 3 Lions and a Kitten in the search bar and it will come right up. It's
a great book. I mean this in the nicest of ways. It is an easy read. I read it in a couple of days.
It really is. And I say this to people who feel daunted, who don't usually read, that it's not, it's not a complicated fancy book. It's essentially me and my stories in book form. It's just like having a chat with me, but I'm not there.
Well, it comes across perfectly. Aza, thank you very much for joining us on the 3 Lions podcast. If you say you come into the Ukraine game, it'd be good to say hello beforehand, because I'll be there.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. Well, I'll arrange to have a beer before.
Sounds good to me.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
You're more than welcome. Wow, what a girl. What a story. What a book. Thanks to Aza there for her time. Her book is called 3 Lions and a Kitten. It's available through Amazon, as she said. Just search that title, it'll come up. That's it from me for this episode. Once again, thank you very much for joining me. Don't forget, you can follow the show on various social media channels. As usual, just search 3 Lions Podcast. Give it a follow or a like, whatever you need to do. If you've got any suggestions for future episodes, please let me know. Always happy to try and provide what people would like to hear. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I'll be back very soon with a review of the Lionesses in the Arnold Clark Cup. I hope you can join me for that one. So until then, take care of yourselves. Cheers.